Egypt is an amazing country. Just think about it. It's one of the biggest agricultural producers on the African continent. And that's despite the fact that, as you can see, if you look to the left, you'll see sand. To the right, more sand. Only somewhere in the Nile Delta or along the river can you actually do any farming. Still, it looks like the country's already out of luck when it comes to new fertile land. It's all taken. Still, there's a reason Egypt is so amazing. Just about every year, farmland expands more and more. It's not the Sahara stealing land from Egyptians. They're the ones taking it back from the Sahara. And one of the reasons the country's winning its fight against the desert is dead plants. How exactly does that work? Let's find out. Rice isn't exactly what comes to mind when you think of Egypt, at first glance anyway. It's hot, dry, there's a water shortage. None of that really goes with soggy rice paddies. Nevertheless, Egypt is the top rice producer in North Africa. It's grown in the Nile Delta, where the water's close by and a massive irrigation system makes this water-loving crop possible. There are roughly 1.6 million acres of rice fields here, and that makes up about 20% of all Egypt's farmland. From these 1.6 million acres, the country reliably gets between 4 and 6 million tons of rice every year. Yeah, that's a massive amount of essential food, especially considering the country's climate problems. The key rice areas are Kafr el-Sheikh, Dakalia, Beira, Sharqiya, and a bunch of other provinces in the north. These areas literally live on water. There are canals, flooded fields, soggy patches that just don't exist in the rest of the country. Here, rice doesn't just grow, it's rooted in the culture and economy. It's one of the cheapest and most common foods in Egyptian cuisine, and at the same time, a steady export product, especially to neighboring countries. But along with rice, Egypt gets a hefty and not so pleasant bonus. After the harvest, up to 4.5 million tons of rice straw are left over every year, plus even more husks, dust, roots, and other junk. All of this is officially called agricultural residue, but unofficially, it's a massive headache. These very leftovers have become one of the country's biggest environmental problems. As noted, rice straw makes up to 25% of all agricultural waste in Egypt. In other words, a quarter of everything that's lying around and rotting somewhere used to be rice fields. What are they doing about it? Nothing useful. Farmers have been burning rice straw right on the fields for years. Why? It's cheap, fast, and what they're used to. But cheap only works in the short term, because when straw is burned, it releases everything it's stored up into the air. Carbon, nitrogen oxides, fine particles, and a bunch of other chemicals that would have been better off staying in the soil. That's how the black cloud was born, smog that settles over Cairo and the Nile Delta in the fall. This isn't some poetic name, it's an actual term used in scientific reports. According to some data, pollution levels in the air spike tens of times during autumn because of rice straw burning. The situation is so serious that Egypt's Ministry of Environment has officially acknowledged the problem. Every autumn, air pollution levels shoot way past the limits, especially in the farming regions of the Delta. Many farmers don't even stop to think about how it all happens. The smoke rises, the wind spreads it around, and that's probably it. No. In the end, it settles in people's and animals' lungs, on plants and houses. Children, the elderly, and asthmatics suffer the most, and not just in the villages, but in Cairo too, where the black cloud rolls in like a seasonal disaster. Fortunately, in recent years, Egypt has started taking the recycling of rice field waste seriously. According to the analysis, just in 2020, over 1.4 million tons of straw were recycled, which greatly cut down on burning and air pollution. Meanwhile, industrial solutions are emerging. For example, in the Beira province, a $228 million plant is being built, where every year they'll produce 2.2 million square feet of wood fiber boards from straw, a kind of boards used for furniture, building materials, and interior finishes. The plant will process up to 245,000 tons of straw per year and will supply raw materials to entire furniture clusters. For a country where wood is expensive and furniture is a big part of the market, this solution looks impressive. So yeah, people have started handling rice straw more wisely. It's being turned into building materials and even furniture, and the country's production capacity for this just keeps growing. Sounds like a win? Actually, that's not even the most interesting thing you can do with this seemingly useless dried grass, because the most amazing results come from using it where straw wasn't supposed to make any difference at all, on Egypt's barren, dead land. In 2022-2023, researchers decided to run an experiment in El Nabaria, Beira Governorate. That's the same lush Nile Delta. Well, lush maybe only from a satellite's point of view, because at the actual experiment site, the soil wasn't all that great. 85.4% sand, 9.5% silt, and 5.1% clay. And in the top 12 inches, it only had 0.41% organic matter, meaning it was poor in nutrients, didn't hold water or nutrients well, and barely supported soil microbes or plant roots. Basically, the soil was just plain infertile. The field experiment was carried out using 4 irrigation methods, along with different mulching techniques: rice straw mulch, compacted mulch, bare soil or no mulch, and a plastic version. Fertilizer was also used. The test crop for all of this was green beans. In the end, researchers found out that using compressed straw mulch is a way to go, and by going down that way, you can get yields of almost 19,800 pounds from 2.5 acres of this kind of barren land. And that's with researchers only meeting 50% of the land's water needs. To compare, let's look at this. A piece of land that also got only 50% watering but didn't have any rice straw mulch ended up yielding just 13,500 pounds per 2.5 acres. So the crops were watered the same, but the results were different. As you figured out, the key is that rice straw, because it acts like a natural sponge. What happens without straw? Water hits the soil and either gets soaked up really fast, disappearing deep down somewhere, or just runs off completely if the soil is really bad. As a result, yields go down, if anything can grow there at all. It's a whole different story when rice straw is added to the soil. Water lands on a pre-laid blanket of rice straw on the barren soil. The moisture doesn't disappear right away. It soaks into the straw, helping preserve such a precious resource in Egyptian conditions. Moreover, the moisture doesn't just vanish, it's released gradually, so the soil and plants get a steady dose of water. A perfect solution for Egypt's typically rare rainfall and limited irrigation. Straw mulch on the ground can also solve one of Egypt's main soil problems, evaporation. And you could also say that straw mulch protects against overheating too. It's simply a helpful shield for the soil and the plants. However, that's far from everything rice straw has to offer. Let's move on to another challenge. In 2015-2016, the Egyptian Rice Research and Training Center, the Field Crops Research Institute, and the Agricultural Research Center ran trials in the Nile Delta. The researchers took 5 tons of rice straw and threw it into the soil on the first plot, which was 2.5 acres. Then they took 5 tons of compost made from rice straw and manure and put that on another 2.5 acre plot in the same way. After that, they planted rice on both plots and on a third control one where the soil wasn't fertilized at all. It turned out that plants grew taller on the plots with straw and straw compost than on the ones without any kind of booster. On top of that, there was an increase in productive shoots, as well as in the weight and length of the panicles. Panicles, by the way, are the top part of a rice plant where the grains form. But it didn't stop at the panicles. The researchers also noted a rise in both the number and weight of the grains. No doubt straw's ability to hold moisture played a part in this, but the impact of dead grass turned out to be much more complex. For example, rice straw has a lot of potassium. It still holds on to 70 to 80% of what the plant absorbed while alive. Even better, since rice is a cereal grain, its straw contains 1.2 to 1.7% more potassium than in non-cereal counterparts. Sounds insignificant? Well then, you don't know the benefits this element brings to the soil and plants. This is an essential nutrient for plant growth, a macronutrient that plants use in huge amounts throughout their entire life. It's tied to the movement of water, nutrients, and carbs in plant tissues, helps activate enzymes inside the plant, and affects the production of protein, starch, and ATP, which can regulate the speed of photosynthesis. In short, it positively impacts root growth, boosts drought resistance, and does a whole lot more. You know what other elements are crucial for plants? Nitrogen and phosphorus. Nitrogen, you could say, is everything related to the growth of almost every kind of plant. Phosphorus is for roots and flowering. A lack of this trio of elements is one reason why soil can be infertile overall. So in rice straw, besides potassium, there's also phosphorus and nitrogen. And when it gets on infertile soil and starts breaking down, all these elements move into the soil and to the plants growing in it. Another surprising result of using rice straw showed up when researchers started digging. The soil, which used to be hard and packed tight, became loose, soft, and porous, like someone had fluffed it up with a shovel. The thing is, as the straw breaks down, it creates tiny pores in the soil. These are little gaps that let roots breathe and push deeper. Instead of fighting against tough, dry ground, the plant kind of got a new home with ventilation and moisture to spare. Also, rice straw is used to produce biochar. According to various studies, using it as an additive can significantly improve the physical and chemical properties of the soil. For example, biochar plays a key role in reducing nitrogen losses in the soil, meaning it boosts the efficiency of this vital element. Besides that, biochar made from rice straw is like a magnet for soil microbes, boosting their activity while at the same time suppressing soil pathogens, which is really useful. So what's the bottom line? In Egypt, they know how to use waste to make infertile soil better suited for growing crops. You can't say that the majority of rice straw goes to fertilizer. There's still a ton of waste, and a lot of it's still being burned. However, there's strong confidence that Egyptians will use more and more straw as fertilizer because the black cloud keeps swallowing up the country's cities. And there was never much good farmland in the country. Improving the condition of infertile land is a must. No other way around it. But you know what's an even bigger problem? Even though Egypt has a lot of unusable land by default, there's an industry that wrecks at least the somewhat fertile areas. For example, a pulp and paper mill makes paper for Egyptian offices and schools. At the same time, it turns the rivers and soil into a dump because it releases wastewater containing sulfates, chlorides, organic residues, heavy metals like mercury, lead, and cadmium. All of that can seep into the soil. This leads to a change in acidity levels, which disrupts nutrient availability for plants and microbes. Also, higher acidity causes a drop in soil's biological activity and makes the structure worse, which can lead to nutrients washing away. Plus, it gets harder for water and air to get into the soil, and that hurts the growth and activity of soil organisms. In short, soil reacts sharply to any change, to any element that's not natural for it. Each one becomes a reason why soil, to some extent, ends up less suitable for growing plants. What does rice straw have to do with it? Well, you can actually make paper from it with almost no harm to the environment. For example, in Egypt, there's an organization called El Nafeza for Contemporary Art and Development, founded in 2005, that works with this kind of paper. Their workers take bales of rice straw and soak them in water for anywhere from 2 days to a week. Then they cook it on the stove for 2 to 3 hours. After that comes the shredding phase and, of course, lots of cleaning stages. Then the shredded rice straw turns into fiber. Yeah, it's not on an industrial scale, more like handmade products. Still, it's a contribution to reducing soil degradation in Egypt and shrinking the black cloud. But here's the catch. The thing is, current technologies only let you turn about 30% of rice straw into cellulose, and the rest still ends up in the trash. However, in Egypt, they've developed a technology that can extract over 65% of rice straw as cellulose. In that case, it really becomes profitable and can make a much bigger difference in fighting pollution in Egypt. Moreover, a researcher from the department that was working on studies in this area said that during the extraction process, you get enough cellulose not only to make paper, but also for natural phenolic materials. These, in turn, can be purified to get an insecticide that's natural and non-toxic to humans, but works well against flies and mosquitoes, specifically those common in Egypt and other African countries that carry lymphatic filariasis, a deadly infection. Sounds good. But one of the agricultural economics professors at Cairo University warns that the benefits of the new technology will depend on how it's implemented and communicated to farmers. He also adds that any such idea needs to include a way to transport rice straw from farmers' fields to industrial facilities. Otherwise, even the best new tech won't lead to success. Another way to use rice straw is turning it into electricity. In recent years, the country really needs it. For decades, Egyptians didn't even think about power cuts. Everything worked reliably. But in the summer of 2023, the government invested too much in the national power grid and then decided to cut costs with rolling blackouts. Egypt gets a lot of its energy from gas. So when production dropped at the country's biggest field, called Zohr, it became a big problem. Then a bunch of other issues popped up and Egypt had to increase the daily power cuts to 2 hours. Even though Egypt became a regular exporter of liquefied natural gas in 2019, its imports from Israel also went up. At one point, the gas flow from Israel dropped, which made the situation even more unstable. And that's exactly when rice straw would be the perfect solution. There's even a study that calculated if all the rice waste were sent to a thermal power plant every year, it could generate 4,193 gigawatt hours of energy annually. Sounds pretty good. But what's even better is that rice straw is absolutely perfect for producing biogas. We're talking 7.1 gigawatt hours of biogas power every year. Here, there's zero burning going on, only natural processes. Shredded straw is put into a bioreactor, a tank like this. Inside, they create oxygen-free conditions, which activates bacteria that break down the organic matter in rice straw. As a result, gas is produced. To be more specific, it's a gas made up of 60 to 70% methane and 30 to 40% carbon dioxide with some impurities. How does this gas turn into energy? For instance, biogas can be fed into a gas-powered generator, but it's worth mentioning that it can also be used for cooking food and as fuel for vehicles. All in all, Egypt's got quite a lot of ways to put rice straw to use. The main thing is scaling it up, because for now, all this can only theoretically make a real difference in the country. But judging by what we learned today about dead grass, large-scale use is just around the corner. Straw just has way too many benefits.